Hey everybody, it is Professor Parish, and if you can believe it, we are on Module 4. We are a month into this class. Isn't it crazy? It's so crazy. I'm very shocked at how fast January went by. So we are going to go over Module 4. It's a pretty simple module today. It's a pretty simple module to talk about, but we are going to go over it. And so let's look at that guide. As you'll notice, there's not a lot of reading assignments for this week. It's mainly submitting paper number 1. So it's getting paper number 1 complete and submitting it. So far, everybody's topics and thesis that I've looked at and their outlines, they all look great for paper 1. I'm really excited to see what you all come up with. I was going to go over just a brief, quick little tutorial about dialogue writing, if that is something that you are working on. So let me, while we're doing this, let me go ahead and pull up a quick thing here. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about dialogue writing because that's we don't have any readings for this week. So I want to talk about dialogue writing because some of you are using dialogue in your paper. All right, so I do want to go over that here. So the big thing about this first writing assignment for this short story is you don't have to have dialogue. That's rule number 1. You don't have to have dialogue if it doesn't warrant it. So don't feel like you have to add in dialogue. But some of you, based on your topics, you are planning on having it. So there are a few key rules with dialogue. The biggest one is every time, let me make that a separate word, every time someone new starts talking, you start a new paragraph. And that seems like it's going to be, very tedious, but here's the thing. So if I say, Sandra says, are you coming after school to my house? And then say, Chandra replied, sadly, no, I have to work. So every time you have someone new starting a conversation, you do start a new sentence, a new paragraph. And that's just to help your reader distinguish who's talking in the moment. Because I've had students before, they've had a whole big thing of dialogue, and while it's talking about the same point, it's like multiple people talking in the paragraph, and it can get confusing. So it may be that a lot of your paper is just line after line, but you do need to separate that dialogue. Make sure that each person talking gets their own section, right? That it's distinct. That's the thing, that it's distinct. So there's that. There is that. But then also another rule of dialogue is that you put your punctuation inside quotation marks. All right? So for example, if I say, Neely noted how, and then I do a comma, everything was harder without studying. What I do is I put my period before the quotation mark ends because that period is ending the sentence inside the quotation marks, right? Now your comma, if you have something like this, your comma goes on the outside here before the sentence starts. But when you end the sentence, that punctuation should be within the quotation marks, okay? So that's another thing. And here's a tip about dialogue. All right. I took a creative writing class in college, and it was really fun, and we always did different exercises each week. It was face-to-face. That's the one thing about this class being online. It's hard to do things when you're not face-to-face because you can't be in a group setting, right? But one thing that my instructor recommended that we do one weekend is that we were at a university in a campus town, so there were lots of coffee shops and places you could go hang out at after class. And our instructor told us, she said, what I want you to do is go to the coffee shop uptown. There was one right by our classroom. She's like, I want you to go there and I want you to sit there for 30 minutes over the weekend at some point for 30 minutes. And I want you to sit there with a notebook and I want you to eavesdrop on someone's conversation and I want you to write it down word for word. And we were like, oh, and she's like, I want you to do that for 30 minutes and then bring that back to class next week. And it seemed like such a creepy assignment. You're like, but you're at a coffee shop. So usually people aren't having sometimes you do have deep intellectual conversations at a coffee shop, but it wasn't anything personal. People weren't talking about their bank accounts or anything like that. So I did that. I went to a coffee shop. I sat there for half an hour and I listened to this conversation, and these two people were talking about biking, going biking in the park that was nearby. And the thing that you learn about dialogue in doing that is in listening to conversations in real life. The thing that you find out is that a lot of times people talk in short, choppy sentences. People can talk vaguely or specifically, right? Stephen King there's a big trope that Stephen King writes like an author writes. Dialogue with Stephen, if you've ever read a Stephen King work, a lot of his dialogue does not sound like normal people talk. It sounds like you'd read in a book, right? And so creating realistic dialogue can be tricky, but it makes the story more relatable. So for example, when you see, so I could say, like, if I was Charles Dickens or someone, I could say that the man opened the door and said, "Good morning, how are you today? Is everything okay? Or everything all right?" Right? I could say that, but that may be not realistic. If I was on campus the other day, I saw someone when I was walking by campus, and I said, "Good morning." And then the other person replied, "Hey." And I said, "How is it going?" And they replied with, "Fine, you?" Now, obviously, that's very realistic. It's not very engaging, but it is realistic dialogue. But the point of the exercise that she had us do was to show us that the way people talk oftentimes is not the way that we write. And so as an author, especially as a creative author, you're trying to find that middle ground, right? You're trying to be not as direct as this, because this is boring, but you're also trying to be, this is kind of a middle ground. Like, "Good morning, how are you today? Is everything all right?" Like, that's a pretty good middle ground. You're not being too formal, but you're not being too casual, right? Because you want your story to be interesting. But it was a good exercise for us as students to figure out how people actually talk, and then how to tweak that into our own writing to make it seem more realistic, but also keep that creativity. So if you're somebody that has a lot of dialogue in your story and you're struggling with that, if it's something you're struggling with as a writer, that you're like, "I just don't know how to make my dialogue sound good," go and listen to a conversation. Like, go to the cafeteria and listen. Go pay attention to somebody talking in the hallway. You don't have to eavesdrop necessarily, but pay attention to how people talk. And then you can kind of see the patterns and rhythms and way that people communicate, and you can start to incorporate that into your own writing. And it will make it more dynamic and more engaging, but also more realistic. So that's my exercise for today. It's writing dialogue. As you guys finish up the drafts of this first paper, you guys will be able to see that. So yeah, so that is the guide. Let's go to the paper 1 submission here. All right. So your paper is due by Sunday. Now this is very, very important. It is worth 100 points. It is worth a lot of points in this class. It's basically a 10th of your grade, if you can think of that. So because it is worth so much, do not be late in submitting it. It is open until this time. At 11:59 on February 6th, it will close, and I will not accept late work. Now, the good news is if you submit it on time, you will get a chance to revise it. So if you're worried, if you get to Sunday night and you're like, "Oh, I don't know if it looks as good as I want it to, I'm nervous," go ahead and submit it, and I will look at it and give you feedback, and I'll grade it. But let's say you get a B, let's say you get an 88, and you're like, "I really want an A." I will give you feedback to tell you what you need to change, and you will have a certain time period, and I'll talk about it in the next week's video, but you'll have a certain amount of time to go back and tweak that paper and change it for a better grade. All right? I'm not one of those instructors. I always hated in English classes when you turned in a paper and the instructor's like, "Okay, that's it, here's your grade." And I'm like, "But we're writers, we're supposed to be practicing, we're supposed to get better." And they were like, "Sorry, here's your B." And you're like, So as a teacher myself, I'm very much in favor of letting you revise for a better grade. Now, you only get a certain amount of time to do that, because I don't want you to stew on this all semester. We have bigger fish to fry, but I do want you to be able to revise your paper and get a better grade. So if you're nervous about that, go ahead and submit it by Sunday, and you'll be able to get a grade on it. So I'm going to switch to student view and show you all. So when I switch to student view, this is what it shows you, all right? So it shows you that you're in progress. You basically can either submit it from Canvas, or you can upload from your computer. So if you click upload, this upload button, it's going to upload. You can upload from Google, from Microsoft 360. You can upload from Canvas if you've saved it there. you can just basically click this choose here, file upload, and it'll let you pick from your computer, right? Obviously, if you've saved this paper to your computer, you'll click this one with the rocket ship. If you've saved it on Canvas, you'll pick that one. If you've saved it through Google Docs or through your Office 365 online, you'll submit it that way. The point is you will get a paper to submit. And let's say that I go to Documents, and let's say that I just choose that file there. Okay. So then it'll show you a file, right? It'll show a file here down below. If it has that green button, if it has that green arrow, it means you're good to submit. If you accidentally click the wrong file, you can submit this you can do this delete button and it'll get rid of it and you can start over again. And then when you're done, there's a blue submit button that will, once you've attached a file, it will be blue and it'll let you click it, okay? So that's how you submit and upload a file for this first paper, all right? That's how you do it in the class, okay? So that's pretty much it. That is how it'll let you do it. And that's, I'm going to go back and exit student view. But yeah, that's how you upload the paper and do all of that. And then it'll be due by Sunday. So as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. The big thing is that you get the paper turned in this week. The sooner you get it turned in, the sooner I can grade it. But you have till Sunday, so don't feel rushed. You have plenty of time. You have all week to work on it. I wanted to give you guys this whole week to work on this paper because I want you to make it as good as you can, and then that way maybe you don't have as many revisions to do, if that makes sense. But if you have any questions at all, please reach out. Don't hesitate to let me know. Email me. I will be out at high schools this week and for most of February during the mornings, but when I'm back in the afternoons, I should be able to answer your emails. So just let me know if you have any questions at all. But otherwise, that's our assignment for this week in the class. Next week, we'll start poetry. I'll talk about revisions. I'm pretty excited, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, all right? So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all next week with Module 5 of English 123. Bye.